Well, what's fascinating is that the poorer the country, the larger the families. I mean,
Mhm.
that's it. So it's the more affluence we get, the more we, and the real reason for that has to do with individualism, I think. So what happens in a wealthy economy is that you begin to atomize the family into its individual units, because you don't have a vision that's strong enough to keep the family working together as a cohesive team. And so you no longer need to have more children. It's no longer economically advantageous to have more children. You're not working on a farm or whatever. And so you are thinking about each child is thought about as an individual. The mother and father primarily doesn't see themselves through their family identity, but their individual identity. And so you have the money to do that. Now, in a poor country, you have to work together. You have to constantly look out for each other. Your survival is at stake if you start to atomize into individual identities. So there's all kinds of patterns within those cultures to stop the mother, the father, the children from doing that, particularly the children and the mother. I mean, fathers, they can still often get away with trying to become individualistic and pursue some kind of selfish ends, and that's devastating to those families in those poorer countries. But this is why in poorer countries you have large families. And so that what's difficult and what needs to be studied, and this is why I'm adamant about this, is that what Abraham represents is a vision for family that stops the individual the individualism that is inevitable in when you become affluent. So what I saw in these Jewish families is even though they could afford to become hyper individualized, because their primary model for their identity as a father was Abraham, and Abraham, despite being a wealthy man, chose to continue to see himself primarily as Father Abraham, and was more interested in building up his multi-generational family than he was in making money or inhabiting an individual identity. That this is the model for Jewish fathers. This actually inoculates them from becoming um, disinterested in large families when they become affluent. They continue to see themselves primarily as fathers and continue to see it as a advantageous thing to build a large family. And so part of that is there's really simple ways in Israel where people, as they actually experience what the goodness of life as the head of a large family clan, as a patriarch of a large family, through something like a Shabbat dinner. I mean, I think that Shabbat dinner is the gateway of complete cultural transformation from what these guys are talking about, a culture that essentially wants small families because we all primarily are living our lives out as individuals, you begin to see and experience the goodness that's described in Psalm 128 of a man at a table surrounded by his children and his wife within his home. Like that is the good life in Israel, and that is not the good life with Christians in the West. They don't experience the goodness of a multi generational table on a weekly basis. They experience it the same frequency as the culture experiences that, which is maybe twice a year on Thanksgiving and Christmas. That is not enough to create a culture that that is dedicated to building a multi generational family. So I think economics play a role, but one of the things that's amazing to me is that if you do start to adopt Abraham's vision of family and fatherhood and start to really value children and value multi-generational family, and of course Abraham only had 2 sons. You don't have to have a large family. He would have loved to have a large family. I mean, he did end up having more children after Sarah died, but he lived his life primarily in a very small family. But in that small family, he was constantly lifting up the values of family and multi-generational family. And God's promise to him was that, "No, your descendants will be like the sand of the seashore or the stars of the sky." And so that was what was really driving Abraham's family vision. So I think that wealth can actually make that a lot easier. I mean, it's a lot easier to have a large family if you do have the resources to have it. And I think that part of what we need to begin to think about is a lot of families are very affluent and have plenty of money to have a large family if they actually were multi-generational. The problem today is that you have this culture of you're kicked out at 18, we hit the reset button. Good luck, son or daughter with your life. I made it, I somehow survived, you make it, you somehow survive, give you any resources or anything that would help you get going in your life, that is just going to lead you to having an entitlement attitude towards life. And so you need to learn from the school of hard knocks the same way I did. Man, that is a terribly devastating way to think about building multi-generational families because it really requires in most times in history, and I think we're getting to another time where the economy is starting to suffer in a way where you're going to need your parents' help to do this early. If you don't do this early, you might not get to do it at all. And so I think that I would certainly tell a young family that doesn't have any family support, like, do it anyway. Have kids early and often, and really lower your lifestyle. And you're gonna have to be really creative and work through, a really tough, 5-10 year season potentially of near poverty to pull that off. But what you're actually providing for in the future is that you want to pay that forward. Make sure that you don't put your kids in that situation. Be raising your children to desire to have kids early and often, but then communicate to them that you're going to get the help of me and your mother or me and your father to make sure that you can thrive economically even in those really early years of having children. And this is the way that multi-generational families function in the Middle East. I mean, I every time we're in Israel, I take people, back past these Arab houses where a different generation lives on, each floor of the house. And so that's a design that's built to help children immediately have children because they have the help of potentially 2 upstream generations who oftentimes are living literally upstream in the house. And so you don't have to worry about housing, initially. You just worry about building your business and having children, and then you're getting the support of the family before you.